For a very, very long period of time, man has dreamt of his place in the stars. He has dreamt of exploring the vastness of space and conquering the various celestial bodies. The Quran asserts in chapter 55 that, O man and jinn, if you are able to do so, then penetrate into the outskirts or the depths of the heavens. But you will not be able to do so except with authority. The word authority here is generally understood as authority from God. Yet this does demonstrate that without this kind of providence or authority, such travel may not be possible. This endeavor, which would be carried out by future generation of humans, would be one which would challenge the technological as well as perhaps cultural, religious, the kind of spiritual or logistical capacities of humanity. It would be a very difficult task comparable to the exploration and the colonization that was carried out by past humans when they were migrating through various lands and settling on remote islands and remote continents. Yet it is a task nonetheless that may become more and more necessary as humanity progresses further. It does, after all, seem to be the logical conclusion to human evolution. We, as human beings, are inherently expansionist and territorial, and it's very unlikely to limit the human spirit, for better or for worse, to a specific geographical location. And this may include our very home planet if it comes to the fact that we become very technologically advanced and we may not be able to solve territorial disputes simply by conquering other lands on this planet. Eventually, and as has come to pass, we have run out of land on this earth to conquer and explore, and hence the next step would be to look outwards into the vastness of space towards the various celestial bodies to try and figure out a new place for us in this cosmos. Although such space travel would most likely be improbable for the next few decades, perhaps, because most of the major world civilizations are undergoing their own major crises, and the near future at least seems as an era of much conflict and war between humanity in general. By the end of this century, perhaps at least, or perhaps in the next century, we would expect to see a much greater effort being put into space exploration and conquering other planets. Without a doubt, if humanity could pass through the next era of difficulty towards a more golden age, quote unquote, or a more technologically advancing age, it would be very likely that we would delve into the cosmos and explore its depths. Such a conquest may be necessary and inevitable in the long run because it may just help to alleviate many of the territorial disputes on this planet. If countries cannot conquer one another by war, if countries cannot seize other countries' lands, then why not delve into space to seize whole planets for yourself? This would lead inevitably to a space race where countries would try to conquer different planets, different parts of different planets, different celestial bodies or parts of celestial bodies, and there'd be much contest and much competition in this colonization, for it would involve the pride of a nation. Such expeditions would inevitably bring back a lot of valuable resources which would enrich and which would give much wealth to the home colonies, and this would alleviate internal tensions within our planet Earth, within different countries, as our focus would be shifted outwards towards space colonization. Such an endeavour would most likely be carried out by a futuristic, militaristic, somewhat nationalistic or religious, or at least having a very strong sense of culture. Such a civilization would combine the necessary aspects which I would feel would be important for such a journey, which would combine, a will to power, so to speak, or a will to greatness or winning honor in one's homeland, plus the required national fervor or religious fervor or just spiritual fervor that would give a person a purpose in pursuing such an endeavor. And just in general, the belief perhaps of a purpose behind the mission or a higher power or a greater cause that is guiding this endeavor of colonizing new planets. Such an endeavor, of course, would be comparable to the colonists of the past when they colonized different lands or discovered new lands, bringing back much resources and much wealth to their home nations, but also, and most importantly, national pride. In time, however, the inhabitants of these planets would inevitably begin to drift apart from their home nations, and indeed, these other planets that have been conquered, their inhabitants would inevitably drift away from the home planet, as there's such a large distance that culture could not just simply be transmitted from one to another. They'd develop divergent cultures, divergent religions, divergent customs, and they may diverge into different species altogether. And what this may lead to is a lack of intimacy and a lack of mutual coordination between two planets with both with humans in them. But such a large distance between a home planet and another planet would make it so that they would ultimately diverge completely, and much conflict perhaps would be between planets in this theoretical world where we do go and conquer other worlds. The new conflicts would become those of a planet between a planet or whole systems against each other instead of just within a planet. Thus, I would assert that it's not fair to say that such a world where space exploration becomes widespread, such a civilization perhaps, or such a world would not be one which is utopic in nature or very peaceful, because such a world would have its own conflicts, just the area of conflict or the locus of the conflict would switch from between nations on one planet to between nations on different planets. And so it's very naive to perceive this as a new golden age of humanity. If anything, more conflict and more destruction would probably arise from such space colonization, so to speak. There's also no saying whether if we were to discover life or ecosystems on other planets, if humans wouldn't just end up accidentally destroying these by bringing over new diseases or by just committing atrocities or whatnot. And we may end up harming the home planets, these new planets that we discover, out of our greed, out of our lust for resources. It's very probable because, as humans, we do end up making very silly mistakes, and only in hindsight, many centuries later, do we realize the catastrophe that we have brought about, but by then it's too late. We'd also have to consider the fact that there are new variables that we would not have accounted for, because space exploration is a new phenomenon that we are just beginning to understand, and hence we would not fully understand the situations that we may get into or the variables involved or the specific aspects of such an endeavor until we finally do engage in it. And of course, hindsight gives us the advantage of knowing what we got wrong, but of course, in such a situation, we may not know in which way we should act or what would be in the best interests of all parties involved to act. Hence, whilst we may view it as our inevitable destiny to engage in space travel, and indeed it would be a necessity, and there's no stopping human expansion, such an endeavour would have to be treated with caution and would have to be treated with a mature understanding that whilst it will bring about a lot of benefit for humanity, it will not necessarily bring about a golden age.